Hey folks, welcome back to my channel, Relationship Haven. In today's story, OP found out his girlfriend cheated on him with a guy after she claimed she was just giving him emotional support to help him get over a breakup. Yeah, right. OP then got revenge by ghosting her without giving her any warning whatsoever, and now his girlfriend is losing her mind. In today's second story, OP found out his wife of 20 years cheated on him and needs advice on how to proceed. Now, let's get into today's stories. I have been dating a girl I met at work. We'll call her Martha, for 1.5 years, of which the last half year has been long distance. We've been meeting once a month for a weekend or so. We have another colleague, let's call him John, and we've met his longtime girlfriend, let's call her Jane, on the vacations we've taken in the last year. Jane works elsewhere and has been with John since their high school days, more than 9 years. A week ago, I got an email from Jane. I don't know you too well, so it's probably not my place, but I got jilted and I don't want the same to happen to the other hurt party in this matter. John and Martha have been involved since October. I don't know to what extent or if it was from even before. I don't wish to know either, because whatever I'm aware of beyond a doubt from their messages and subsequently his confession is enough for me to break it off. I'm not in touch with anyone in that crowd anymore, and I don't intend to be. I don't know what your relationship with her is. This was just an FYI. Good luck and take care. I trust my girl, so my first reaction was to show her this email and ask her to find out if John is okay after what seemed to be an ugly breakup, as they're very close. She got defensive and said I had no right to accuse her, and I should have deleted the email and have never shown it to her if I truly trusted her. I spoke to another colleague, Bill, and told him what had happened. He said John had told everyone he had a breakup sometime before October, but continued hanging out with Jane, which everyone had found odd, intervened, and then finally left him alone on the subject. He also told me that Martha and he spent a lot more time together now, though he didn't suspect anything romantic. Now, I'm not proud of this part, but I got frustrated at this point and wrote back to Jane asking her for evidence. She wrote back saying she didn't want to get involved any further, and the confrontation was in person. So, anyway, she had no evidence. I wrote back, desperately asking for some message or chat for me to confront. She wrote back giving some personal details of the things she had read, the terms of endearment they had for each other, the physical involvement description, etc., and said to either trust her or not, but please keep her out of it for now. I confronted Martha with the details, and she denied the whole thing. I really don't know what to do. Update. Here's how it unfolded. I told her I was uncomfortable with this whole scenario and would prefer if she maintained some distance from John. She burst into tears saying she was only being a good friend to him to help him through his rough breakup. I demanded to know why she hadn't told me about the breakup if she knew, what with all her continuous yapping about every other random thing. She said he had told everyone about the breakup, but was still trying to make it work with her. So, she wasn't sure what the scenario was. She went on to tell me that Jane was a complete psycho and told me horror stories of things she did for attention. Jane was allegedly envious of my girl's closeness with John, even though nothing was going on between them. She said John had finally severed ties, which caused her to lash out and attack her. Martha threw me. I believed her and felt quite terrible for doubting her. After a lot of her tears were spilled, I apologized profusely and suggested we keep our distance from both of them until they sort out their own shit. She reluctantly agreed. A day later, yesterday, I got a call from Bill, another colleague, and he tells me they were all out together and he saw them making out when they excused themselves for a smoke break. Martha doesn't smoke. I didn't confront or react. I requested Bill to not mention anything to her or John about having alerted me. I told her I had left a few files on her computer and couldn't remember where or what they were called, so I needed some remote access to her system for some time. I pretended it was extremely urgent and I feigned a state of panic. I told her it would take me some time to transfer the files. She gave me access and went to take a shower. I went into her Gmail, but it had nothing. Facebook chats, nothing. Skype, nothing. I felt like shit again, thinking I'm terrible for doubting her, and then I realized she had left her phone on a charge through a USB on her laptop. I accessed the folders and there it was, the ugliness bare of the person I had spent the last 1.5 years loving. Sex chats, dirty pictures, references to the nights they were together, panic, and respective other halves finding out. Nope, he hadn't broken up, just told people in the office that he had. And finally, the latest message of taking it slowly until things settled down. I cleared my traces and logged out. I haven't confronted her yet. I'm deciding between a stone-cold dignified walk away or to make her weep drama-induced walk away. Last update, I left without a word. I know she will try her emotional drama and try to explain away even this with absurd logic or playing the victim or get on the offense by attacking me. I'm not interested in any of that. I left and she can figure out why to hell with her. As advised by a lot of you, thanks to Jane, she replied saying, good riddance, take care. Martha has asked a few common friends to ask why I've blocked her. I told them not to speak of her to me or of me to her. She's a mess from what I hear. I honestly don't give a shit. Indifference feels sweet. Didn't expect to feel this good so soon. I'm grateful to her for being such an in-your-face bish. That sure helps. Thanks everyone for your support to better times ahead. Cheers. OP, I'm sorry you had to go through this and I hope you quickly restore yourself from this relationship. She is an awful human being. She manipulated you and made you doubt what was true. Forget about her because she doesn't deserve your time and effort. You deserve someone better, someone who wouldn't lie to your face or try to gaslight you. I'm glad you found the evidence because if it wasn't for it, you would have still believed her lies. Let's see what the comments had to say about the situation. The Bunny 42 said, I know it takes guts to break up with someone because you fell in love with someone else. I know it's a sniffly thing to do, fall in love with someone else while you are with someone else, but at least have the freaking decency of allowing that other person to move on with their life. Is it people who lie and cheat and don't tell because they're trying to spare that other person's feelings? I mean, which is worse, telling them you're no longer in love with them or cheating, lying, conniving in the background? I personally think it's the cheating, lying, conniving that's worse. I see the lies as no different than a con artist. You are lying to get one over on a person. Is the person paying your bills, your rent? Is that why you're conning them while you get your rocks off? Nothing different than what a con artist does. As someone who has been cheated on a year and a half later, the stone-cold walk away still feels good. I went to no contact and he was telling mutual friends for weeks that he wanted to talk to me. I was bent on moving on ASAP. I regret nothing. I'm glad you decided to just leave without making a big drama. This shows how much of a mature person you are. Breakups are really tough and made worse if you have to leave because of infidelity. You, sir, have my absolute respect for how you've handled the situation, and I hope you keep your chin up and enjoy the rest of your life. Peace, man. I agree with you 100%. Now, let's get into today's second story. Here's a little background. Me and my soon-to-be ex-wife were married for 20 years or so, and by all accounts, had a great relationship. Then she had an affair brought on by a variety of circumstances, midlife crisis, mental health, etc., and we tried to reconcile for several months, but she eventually got back together with her affair partner, moved out of our house, and has since lived sometimes with him and sometimes when they fought or when he kicked her out elsewhere, mostly couch surfing and other temporary solutions. We have a signed settlement agreement but are still waiting for a judge to put final approval on it. It's been more than 15 months since Discovery Day and almost 9 months now since she moved out and we began the process of divorce in earnest. Meanwhile, we still see each other fairly regularly because we have a son to co-parent, even though he doesn't see his mom particularly often. He lives with me full-time and sees his mom for a few minutes, a few evenings a week after school, and for the occasional weekend day adventures, usually a bit less than the one day every other weekend that is outlined in our agreement. My soon-to-be ex-wife and I get along fairly well, all things considered, and I try to keep the lines of communication open because I think it's the best thing for our son. Not to say it hasn't been hard at times, of course, but I've dealt with the pain and so I'm pretty well for the most part. I did some therapy in the early stages and I focused on self-care and self-improvement as much as I can given the cramped schedule of being a full-time single parent with a full-time job. Everything seems to be going well. Then I find out she's in line for a new and better job, and for some reason, this news has really knocked me off my center. It's strange to me that given how poorly she has handled her social life, blowing up our relationship, which I know she regrets, not meeting her responsibilities with our son, losing contact, and being in conflict with a bunch of her family and old friends and other aspects of her personal life, reckless spending, mounting debts, looming bankruptcy, she seems to really be doing well at work. That, I guess, is where she's focused all of her energies. This, in spite of the fact that she's constantly worried, even now, that her supervisors will find out about A, the divorce, and B, the fact that her affair partner is a coworker. But even that is okay. I mean, I'm fine with the fact that she's had success at work, but then I found out she has a line on another job, one which will substantially boost her salary, and I'm knocked off kilter. So, I've been trying to figure out why this is bothering me so much. And I've come up with a few things. I suppose it is part of the fact that, with this new job, she would make considerably more than me, and there's something about that which feels unfair, given how our relationship developed and ended. I'm a little pissed that, while I have a job and a career that I love, the extra burdens and responsibilities that I've had to undertake in the last 15 months because of her infidelity or unwillingness to meet her parental responsibilities have definitely caused me opportunities to advance my own work and career. So, her career advancement strikes a sour note with me. Her increased salary may complicate my life in specific ways. It will likely not be enough to fend off bankruptcy in the long term, but it may well be enough to reduce some financial support that we rely on for our son's school, meaning that, best case scenario, since we share the school expense, her promotion will cost me money. And worst case scenario, especially if she can't get her spending under control, we won't be able to afford the school he's currently in, which will complicate my life considerably. Her increased salary may cause some other minor headaches for a complex of reasons that I won't get into here. Mostly, I suppose, I think about how, if she hadn't blown up our family, she would still likely be in line for a move like this, if not this year, then maybe next year. And we would, as a family, be enjoying the benefits of that new job without the consequences of the rampant spending that accompanied the affair and, in her case, continues in its aftermath. And we would be, as a result, gearing up for a pretty sweet summer, one where we would have the flexibility and opportunity to do a lot of things that we had always wanted to do. I don't even know for sure if she'll get the job or not. She should find out in a few weeks. If the organization's background checks for new leadership hires don't include a credit check, then I think she's got a pretty good shot. At times, I've toyed with the fantasy of somehow encouraging the search committee to include a credit check, but that's just a fantasy. One of the first decisions I made as I was first dealing with the situation 15 months ago was this. I get to decide how this changes me, and I'm not going to let this situation turn me into someone that I don't want to be. That has served me pretty well as a core principle moving through all of this, and so I wouldn't really do anything to sabotage her career. But even so, the thought of her getting that job hurts a little, but fortunately, typing this out has helped. OP, how you're feeling is quite understandable. You're human after all. Try and look at the situation from the perspective that you're spending quality time with your son. I'm sure he will appreciate you being a good parent, so that's a big win. And about your ex-wife, contact your lawyer. Since you're mostly taking care of your child, and due to that, you've been lacking with your job, I'm sure he or she can offer you some advice if your wife does get the job. Take good care of yourself and your son. Let's see what the comments had to say. Birdsinger29 said, I see her paying alimony and child support to you. Speak to your lawyer. I'm confident that will be the case. I get why this bothers you, and I don't blame you one bit. However, it might be time to be a bigger man. You may want to show your son how man acts and not be vindictive or resentful. Work on being the best that you can be and being the best role model for your son that you can be. Also advise your lawyer of the situation. You should be able to revisit any previous agreements. Yes, I know it sucks, but sometimes you just have to hold your head up and move on. All the best to you. Settlement agreements can change because of an increase in salary. Have your lawyer redo it if she gets the promotion. Thanks for taking the time to listen to today's stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and comment below on what your thoughts are on today's stories. If there's a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care. I started working as a garbage man because of the lucrative pay. I wanted to be able to provide for myself and a future mate. It helped that I didn't find it hard to wake up at 3 in the morning. I got my own 2-bedroom apartment by the age of 21. I started going out on the town in an attempt to meet a woman. I found one that stood out to me. I saw her sitting all by herself in a bubble tea shop, reading a colorful paperback. I introduced myself, and she let me sit down with her. She was soft-spoken and seemed generally sad. She would perk up about certain things in conversation, but overall she seemed to have a past that made her cautious and hesitant to make friends. We met several more times, and I found out she didn't even speak with her family anymore. Not her parents, brother, or any of her old friends. Without anyone, she just survived on her own, painting in her little studio apartment. She sold her art as part of her income, but she also worked part-time at an art cafe, where she hosted and taught wine and paint nights. She was sweet, but didn't want to say anything more about her past, like why nobody talked to her anymore. After dating for a year and a half, she moved in with me. I felt responsible for her and cared deeply. I wanted her to know she could come to me for anything. About 3 months of living together were really wonderful. Then her childhood friend got in touch with her again. I thought it was great, and I supported her. She was really excited, but nervous to talk to him again. I thought it was because she was afraid of getting close, only to be hurt again, but that's not exactly what was going on. It turned out he didn't speak to anyone from his past either. He was working a construction job 4 hours away from us, and started video calling and texting my girlfriend all the time. I tried to remain supportive, but he was taking up a lot of her time, and it seemed way more than necessary, even if they hadn't spoken for a while. When I started thinking this way, I felt like I sounded paranoid for accusing them of falling for each other. I decided my girlfriend just wouldn't do that, especially not when I was there for her and being exactly who she needed in life. Right after I decided to relax about it, she asked me if her friend could come stay in the spare room for 4 days, the duration of a local construction project. I didn't want to open the door to distrust in the relationship, so I said he could. I wanted her to see me as the man she could spend her life with, and if I didn't let her friends come over, she wouldn't feel like this was her home. I feel stupid now for being so considerate about how she felt, and our future, because she didn't consider me or our future at all. I said yes, but I also called off work so I wouldn't have to leave them alone. I slept lightly for the first 2 nights, but it seemed like my girlfriend stayed in bed all night. She woke up with me at the same time the first 2 mornings, but on the 3rd, she was gone when I woke up. I ran through the house in a panic, only to find her in the kitchen with AP, making breakfast for us all. I sat alone, uncomfortably watching them from the table. AP gobbled down the eggs while standing up and left for the site. I breathed a sigh of relief, having my girlfriend to myself again, but she only sat with me quietly to eat her eggs, then retreated to the shower. After her shower, she left to bring AP a lunch she packed for him. This pissed me off. I bit my tongue until she was out the door, but then I freaked out. She never packed me lunch, even though I mentioned how hungry I was whenever I got home. When she got back, I told her we needed to talk. I said I didn't appreciate how affectionate she was being with someone that was only meant to be a friend, that her actions seemed like that of a girlfriend, and they talked way too much. She absolutely freaked out. I couldn't have seen it coming. She was always so meek and mild-mannered, but it changed in an instant as soon as I accused her of being romantic with AP. Now I knew it was because I guessed exactly what was happening, and she didn't like that I could see through her acting. She accused me of being crazy and paranoid, for thinking she'd be so disrespectful to me. She said I was wrong, and needed to have more trust in her after being together for nearly 2 years. I started to second-guess how I was feeling, and left the house. I didn't know what to think anymore, but I knew I didn't like how she talked to her friend. I decided to search for her mom on Facebook. I found her and sent her a message. I explained the situation and said, long story short, I needed to know if something happened between these friends in the past. She called me and told me that she and my wife's father stopped talking to their daughter completely when she and her friend refused to stop sleeping with each other. It was years ago now, but they were very inconsiderate of anyone else, and would cheat on other people instead of just being together. I was speechless and mortified. I drove back home in a hurry and found them locked in the spare room. I banged on the door and yelled for them both to get out. I said I got off the phone with her mom and knew all about their off and on, hidden relationship. My girlfriend then said she doesn't need to explain herself to me, then started packing her stuff. As they loaded his old truck, I called her a bunch of names for wasting my time and making me think she loved me. She was crying, but I don't know why. She was only getting what she wanted, right? 1 month later, I got home from work and found her sitting on my doorstep. She was crying really hard, her face was red. I'm not an evil person, but I was glad to see she wasn't happy. She said AP met a new single woman with a nice home, and decided that sleeping with each other, no matter who they were with, was wrong. In order to get back to my house, she had to take an Uber. I told her to go get her old apartment back, because I never wanted to see her, and I would certainly never trust her. I slammed the door in her face. I have no idea where she went or what she did with her life. Whenever I passed the bubble tea shop, I never saw her. She ruined the good thing we had, because she couldn't leave her repeating mistake in the past. OP, I am so sorry your girlfriend had this terrible, taboo relationship with her friend. If she learned anything from her past, it should have been to leave him alone, so she could move on. She had a chance at a happy life with you, and convinced you to trust her. She might have believed the mistake was in the past, but she didn't realize it was still up to her to let him back in her life. I am glad you came out of this situation having learned a lesson. You weren't persuaded to forgive her, and you followed through with your hunches. Contacting her mom was the perfect way to know that, without a doubt, this girl was no good. You just happened to come home and find them locked in the room, but you already knew something was up since they talked way too much. I wish you the best of luck in life, and thank you for sharing your story. Now let's get into our second story for today. My wife and I were married for 13 years, and during that time, I supported her as she started attending school to become a veterinarian. Before she graduated, she started working for an experienced vet with his own practice. We were very much in love, and she thanked me often for supporting her during this time, so she'd be able to follow her dream of becoming a vet and owning her own practice. Meaning that hopefully, she could take over the one she was working at now, when the man she works for retires. He mentioned that he was looking for someone to fill his role, and my wife believed he was referring to her. He was, but I don't think she anticipated what he was going to ask of her in return. I certainly didn't anticipate her betrayal. She came home late one day, feeling quite happy and energetic. I expected her to be exhausted, because that's how she usually felt after an extra long day. Her coming home late usually meant she had to deal with unexpected animals being brought in. Sometimes she witnessed death, and on those days, she usually went to bed without eating. I felt bad, but she did choose the career, so it was something she'd have to cope with. Anyway, on this night, she was not sad or exhausted, quite the opposite. I asked what happened today, and the smile fell from her face immediately. She looked shocked that I was asking such a normal question. She said nothing unusual and asked why I asked. I laughed nervously and said I usually asked her that when she got home, but she was also very happy a second ago, so that's why I was asking. Her face softened, but she didn't know what to say. She finally came up with a fake reason for her bouncy attitude, saying it was the receptionist's birthday. So they played music, ate cake, and acted silly. It was refreshing after a long day. This totally made sense to me, and take me for a fool, I believed her. Everything returned to normal for a few days, except she was happier than normal. Who knew the receptionist's birthday would have such a lasting effect on her? She came home on Friday night, late, and said life always has a way of working out for the better. She's so thankful to be pursuing her dream and working in this career. I was hesitant to say I loved doing it for her, because I just felt like something was wrong. I decided to bring her flowers and a restaurant lunch to work the next day, and that's the day everything changed. The receptionist's name is Blair. When I walked in holding flowers and food, she said she hoped I was the Prince Charming she'd been waiting for. She was flirty and pretty, but I told her I was a married man looking for my wife. When I said her name, she looked me in the eye with a very upset expression. She didn't know what to say or do, she just stared at me. I asked if she was okay, and if she could go get her for me. She finally stood up, looked into the hallway, and whispered for me to come with her outside. I was extremely confused, but I went along with it. We stood by her car, and she told me something I just couldn't believe. She said the other night she was slower to leave than usual, and already said goodbye to Mr. Vet and my wife. They were the last two in the building, besides her. As she put on her coat, she was looking at the security cameras, and saw them doing things in a back room with the door shut, probably not realizing that she was still in the building. My vision started spinning when she told me this, but I snapped myself out of it because my wife was good. She was always so kind and honest and grateful. That's what I was thinking. I asked Blair when her birthday was, and she said October 20th. It was July, so I knew my wife lied about that, but I still couldn't believe she was cheating on me. I told Blair that I needed her help. In exchange for the roses and lunch, I just needed her to stay a little late again, each night until she caught them again, so she could record the screen with her phone and send it to me. I wrote my number on the little card that came with the roses. Maybe I was flirting a little, but that's for fate to decide, she agreed. While she worked, she was uncomfortable knowing now that my wife was married and doing what she was doing. When she first caught them, she assumed the woman was single and wrote it off as none of her concern. She had to fake being nice to avoid suspicion. She didn't have to wait long for them to do it again. She recorded it and sent it to me. It was hard for me to watch. It was my wife's face, and they were doing it. That's all I needed to see. I posted it on the internet, naming her the vet, and the business name. Effectively informing everyone in the town, and anyone they knew. My wife was the quickest to react, but she got home and greeted me before knowing what I'd done. I asked her if she looked at her phone lately, and that's all it took. She hadn't checked it since she cheated on me just hours before. She gasped, covered her mouth, and I could tell her heart started pounding. She was shaking, and her breathing was uneven. She threw her phone at me in her frustration. She dropped to the floor, and the first thing she said was that AP was going to lose his business. I said, well, that's too bad. And my wife charged at me like she became a monster. She blamed me for it, but I said she was crazy. I told her to get out, and she was so hurt by me, for some reason, that she only grabbed a few things and left. She tried telling her family any number of stories in ways that portrayed her as the victim. They didn't believe anything she said. They saw the video and lost all faith in her. They told her she basically risked her career and marriage for nothing. She didn't have to do it, but she did, and this is what happens to people when they don't act with respect. I know all this because it was in the comments of my post. AP lost a bunch of his patient's owners. No one trusted him to behave responsibly, and husbands didn't want their wives or daughters bringing their pets there. His business took a huge hit. Without being able to pay employees, he closed his business. My wife begged me to forgive her after she accepted that her whole family hated her for sleeping with AP. When we first got married, her family was super proud of her for catching me. I refused to allow her to come back into my life because after all those years of supporting her and committing myself to her, she betrayed me for someone else. I would have been a fool to help her. She ended up moving back in with her family. She wasn't working at the time because of AP closing his practice, so she had to quickly find a job. She was absolutely miserable because AP wanted nothing to do with her. He considered her bad luck and felt sick to his stomach whenever he looked at her. He let himself mix pleasure with business, and it destroyed both. She actually told him she was married, but he swore I'd never find out. Once he retired, he promised she could have the business and he'd leave her alone, but I doubt that was going to happen. My wife told me all this in the hopes it would encourage me to forgive her. It didn't help, but it was nice to know the reasoning behind it. I haven't heard from her in a long time now and have been thinking about asking out Blair. She got a new job pretty fast and has remained on my side and loyal since all of this started. She gives me hope, and overall I've learned that it's possible to let go of someone you once loved and trusted because unfair and unpredictable things happen in life. There are other trustworthy people out there. OP, you've been through a shocking life event. I am so sorry your wife made a choice that rendered the 13+ years you spent with her a waste of time. At least you learned some things, but it's extremely disappointing that she didn't honor her vows and respect you any more than that. I appreciate your attitude about it now, although it must have been very difficult to remain so resilient. I'm glad you had Blair on your side for the entirety of the event and afterward. You were both very clever to get the evidence needed to support the claims against the business. And after AP's irresponsibility and disrespect towards another man for sleeping with his wife, he didn't deserve to remain in business. Everything that needed to happen did. I'm so glad you didn't try to forgive her or keep her in your life. It takes strength to resist caring about someone after spending so many years with them, but it was her own choice that led her to this point, and there's no reason you should have to sacrifice or become less of a man. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Sometimes you will find out that your partner cheated on you from an unlikely source. Most of the time, women stick together and they don't snitch, but that didn't happen in this case. For non-glorious years, my wife Samantha and I were a loving couple. I thought anyway. We lived in the sunny landscapes of California, renting houses in various spots along the coast to satisfy our adventurous spirits. Life was good. We surfed in the mornings, hiked in the afternoons and spent our evenings cooking elaborate meals together. Our social circle consisted of fellow thrill seekers, many of whom were couples that Samantha had known since high school. Her best friend, Mandy, and Mandy's husband, Ryan, were fixtures in our lives. The four of us were inseparable, taking weekend trips to Napa Valley, road trips up the Pacific Coast Highway and camping excursions in Joshua Tree. I considered Ryan like a brother. We watched football together, talked business ideas and confided in each other about our relationships. My whole world came crashing down when an anonymous letter arrived in the mail addressed to me. The letter was from Mandy. The content was concise, but soul-shattering. Samantha has cheated on you 4 times. Each incident happened during her so-called girls' nights out. My hands shook as the room started spinning. I gripped the kitchen counter to steady myself, the letter falling to the floor. Samantha had always been adamant that our girls' nights were innocent fun, mani pedis, gossiping and dancing. No men allowed. I searched my memory for any red flags, any signs that something more may have happened. Coming up empty, my mind raced with questions. When did this happen? Where did they go? Who told Mandy? And why did she wait until now to tell me? I knew confronting Samantha would be useless. She would adamantly deny everything. I needed more information. I picked up my phone and texted Mandy, "We need to talk ASAP." Within a minute, she responded. "Ryan's out of town until Friday. Come by the house tonight at 7. Mandy had also informed Ryan that I was coming over. This was really happening. Looking at the clock, I had a few hours until I needed to meet Mandy. I decided to go see my colleague, Steve, and get his advice on the situation. Steve and I worked together a few years back, and he was one of the most level-headed people I knew. I met Steve at a coffee shop down the street from his house. As I relayed the bombshell news, Steve listened intently. "You need to talk to Mandy and get the full story before you do anything else. But ultimately, you have got to look out for yourself. Your next steps depend on what Samantha did." Steve's advice echoed in my mind. I left the coffee shop and went for a long drive to clear my head before meeting Mandy. At 7 p.m. sharp, I knocked on Mandy's front door. As she let me in, her eyes were brimming with tears. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table as she detailed the painful revelations 4 times over the past 18 months. Samantha had lied about going out with the girls. She actually went to meet other couples at house parties where many were openly cheating on their partners. Mandy found out when she overheard Samantha on the phone with someone organizing another hookup. Demanding answers, Samantha broke down and admitted everything to Mandy. She swore she didn't have actual sex with anyone, but the deception and betrayal stung sharply. Samantha begged Mandy to keep it a secret, insisting it would never happen again. For months, Mandy reluctantly stayed silent, but the guilt ate away at her, and she knew if the roles were reversed, she'd want the truth, so she sent a letter. "I'm so sorry," Mandy said, tears streaming down her face. "I never thought Samantha was capable of this." I sat in stunned silence, grasping the edges of my now broken reality. Samantha had meticulously lied to me over and over. Entire nights of my life were a fabrication. I felt sick to my stomach as I imagined her flirting at house parties, enjoying the ego boost of other men desiring her. Mandy reached out and squeezed my hand. "Whatever you need, I'm here for you." I thanked her for having the courage to tell me the truth, even when it hurt. Driving home, I processed the ramifications of what Samantha did. According to California law, infidelity cannot be used as leverage in divorce proceedings. So even if Mandy was to testify in court on my behalf, it would be useless. Did I want to salvage this marriage? Could I ever trust Samantha again? I decided I needed legal counsel to understand all my options. The next morning, I scheduled a consultation with Allison, a seasoned divorce attorney recommended by Steve. "You have 2 options," Allison explained. "You can either confront your wife when she returns or see if there's any hope left for the marriage. Many couples do manage to heal after an affair with counseling, but it takes tremendous work and commitment on both sides, or you can discreetly initiate separation. Start untangling your finances. Find a new place to live and have her served with divorce papers. That route obviously provides a clean break." I wasn't ready to make any definite moves yet. So Allison summarized the key logistical steps if I decided on divorce. Over the next few days, my thoughts hovered between utter heartbreak and boiling anger. One minute, I collapsed on the couch in tears. The next, I was throwing tennis balls angrily against the garage door. By Friday, my dominant sentiment was indignation, at Samantha for betraying me and at myself for being so oblivious. I decided right then that I was leaving her. Steve's wise words echoed in my mind. "You got to look out for yourself for once." I needed to put my own well-being first. I texted Steve explaining my decision. Always pragmatic. He said, "Let me know how I can help." I asked if I could rent his vacant apartment for a few months while I figured out the next steps. "Of course, it's all yours." Steve immediately responded. When Samantha's car pulled into the driveway Friday night, I was sitting on the front porch steps waiting for her. I watched her face transform from cheerful to crestfallen as she registered the suitcase at my feet. "We need to talk. I have something to show you first." Before she could conjure any excuses, I withdrew Mandy's letter from my pocket and held it up. Samantha's face contorted in shock. "How could Mandy do this to me?" she shrieked. "You're going to believe something from Mandy over your own wife? She's a miserable, bored housewife who lives through my drama." I shook my head in disbelief at her audacity to make Mandy the villain. "Save it, Samantha. The jig is up. I know about the house parties. I know about you meeting with other couples and other men. I know about everything." Samantha's eyes darted around frantically as she grabs for plausible denials. Of course there was no sly way out. Mandy had already come clean with the whole dirty truth. "I'm so sorry," she choked out. "You have to believe me. Nothing physical ever happened. It was just stupid thrill-seeking. It was an invitation-only scene, had house parties with hot singles and open-minded couples. It was a total farce." I listened, stone-faced, unable to muster any sympathy. "The lying is just as bad as the cheating, Samantha. For over a year, you've been living a double life behind my back. We're done." Samantha pleaded tearfully for a second chance, but my mind was made up. I carried my suitcase to the car, ignoring her frantic questions about where I was going. As I backed out of the driveway, she ran alongside my car, sobbing and begging me not to leave. My heart ached, seeing her so distraught, but I maintained my composure and drove off. She brought this on herself. For me, the only way forward was out. I moved into Steve's fully furnished apartment that night. He came over and helped me bring my things up from the car. Settling onto the couch with a beer, I finally let the emotions of the day spill out. Steve listened quietly. I was beyond grateful to have such a true friend. By morning, the events of the last week felt like a bad dream. In some ways, it was a relief to have the truth exposed instead of lurking silently, but my sense of betrayal still stung sharply. Samantha had been my whole world for nearly a decade. Blowing up that world left me feeling rudderless. I distracted myself with the logistics of getting settled in the apartment. I contacted the bank to remove Samantha from my accounts and revoked her authorized user status on my credit cards. Next, I emailed my boss, explaining I was dealing with an unexpected life change and needed to work remotely for a bit. Luckily, my job in tech allowed that flexibility. I spent the next few days working from my couch, grateful for the productive distraction. By Wednesday, word had spread among our wider social circle about the implosion of my marriage. My mom and sister called to check on me, both offering their unconditional support. They were as shocked and disappointed as I was about Samantha's duplicity. Later that day, I met my dad for lunch at a quiet bistro. I braced myself for the "I told you" speech, since my dad never quite trusted Samantha's adventurous, free-spirited nature, but he was sensitive and sympathetic as I confided the painful details. He agreed to keep it quiet from my mom for now. She had always adored Samantha, and the revelation would devastate her. I decided to take control of the narrative before Samantha could twist the story against me. That night, I posted a video on Facebook Live, knowing many of our friends would be watching. I'm here to set the record straight. Many of you are probably wondering why Samantha and I have gone our separate ways. Well, the truth is she was living a double life, attending house parties with married couples. All the while, she was claiming she was just doing girls' night out. I went on to explain Samantha's web of lies and betrayal over the past 18 months. Even a few of Samantha's childhood friends messaged me privately to apologize for her behavior. They were shocked and angry on my behalf. The emotional relief I felt at blowing Samantha's secret wide open was comforting. My phone buzzed incessantly with calls and texts. Childhood buddies, former colleagues, cousins I hadn't talked to in years, all reaching out to check in. I awoke the next morning to an avalanche of missed calls and voicemails from Samantha. Her tone cycled through rage, disbelief, and pleading. I silenced my phone and focused on returning messages from people I actually wanted to talk to. My inbox was also flooded with emails containing links and screenshots. Facebook Live had gone viral within the California surf community. People were reposting it everywhere in solidarity with me. Samantha was being painted as the villain, which felt justified after her years of lies. 2 months after I left Samantha, an official-looking envelope arrived at Steve's apartment. I ripped it open to find divorce papers from Samantha's attorney. Even though I was expecting it, the finality of seeing it in writing hit me hard. Samantha was petitioning for an even split of assets and debts accrued during our marriage. She also wanted me to assume the lease on the BMW she drove. Since it wasn't my name, fair enough, I just wanted closure. The next few weeks were consumed with legal proceedings, document sightings, affidavits, negotiations between attorneys. In the end, the process went as amicable as possible given the circumstances. I kept the house we owned in Big Sur. Samantha kept the BMW. I told her and the attorney I would give her a year to refinance the BMW in her name. They both agreed. Our savings were divided down the middle. On paper, it was a clean split. Emotionally, though, I was still splitting apart inside. My new normal of solitary evenings felt jarringly foreign. I missed Samantha's laughter ringing through the house while we cooked dinner, missed her playful smile first thing in the morning, missed the partnership and camaraderie that held our relationship together for nearly a decade. But trust, once it's broken, it's impossible to repair it. Samantha fractured the very foundation of our marriage. Every time I looked at her now, all I saw was a brokenness. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I was craving a clean slate. Life in California was too entwined with memories of Samantha. I decided to relocate to Seattle, partly for a fresh start, but also for an exciting new job opportunity. Steve helped me load up a U-Haul with the belongings I wanted to keep. I took one last look at the place we once called home, said a bittersweet goodbye to the Pacific Ocean, and embarked on my next adventure. Settling into Seattle felt cathartic. I reveled in exploring a new city, finding favorite cafes and libraries to work from. Through a neighborhood listserv, I was introduced to a group of guys around my age who also worked in tech. We started getting together regularly for happy hours and camping trips. In this new chapter, I felt in control of my narrative. I was building a life centered around things I valued: career, community, and truth. My trust in others had been shattered, but I was slowly piecing it back together by being more selective about who I let in. A year and a half after leaving Samantha, my heart was starting to open itself to possibilities again. I met an intelligent, grounded woman at a friend's rooftop party. Over the next few months, we fell into an easy rhythm, taking weekend bike rides and cooking meals together. It was a stirring reminder that light can still emerge from darkness. Healing takes time, but the right people can illuminate your path back to hope. My wounds from Samantha's betrayal will always leave scars, but scars are nothing to be ashamed of. They are silent evidence that I survived. I made it through the fire and emerged on the other side, older and wiser. What Samantha did was an egregious violation of trust, but the blame rests squarely on her. I don't regret leaving everything behind for a shot at something better. Don't we all deserve to feel truly seen, known, and loved? I'm grateful that a friend cared enough to tell me the truth, even when it hurt. Her courage enabled me to take back control of my life. Now I can devote my energy to more meaningful pursuits and people. So here I am, embracing this new adventure in an unfamiliar place. I'm crafting a life centered around authenticity, second chances, and a world of possibilities. My past will always be a part of me, but it's time to start writing a new future. Well, in my opinion, I think Mandy opened the door to Samantha cheating, but her guilty conscience got the better of her, which I think was the right thing to do. Now, what I gather was Mandy and her husband seemed to be swingers. I might be wrong, but Samantha took the opportunity to label those outings with Mandy and her husband as girls' night, but I don't think he knew Randy was also attending these parties. A crazy story indeed. Until next time. Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. Today's story is about revenge. OP's wife left him for a high school dropout affair partner who was broke as a joke. Now OP is living his best life after he got a promotion at his job, and his wife is now begging for him to take her back. In today's second story, OP's girlfriend is begging for mercy after he kicked her out, when finding out she still has feelings for her ex. Now, let's get into today's stories. OP's wife started to like her personality, silly me, and after 3 months of fooling around, I decided to give the relationship a try. She was from a different town, about an hour away, but she would spend every weekend, holiday, and vacation with me at my place. When we met, I was a CEO and project leader of a company some other fellas and I tried to build from the ground up, but the owner, the boss, unfortunately wasn't able to secure enough funds for us to continue working on it, despite the fact that we were 2 to 3 months away from putting the product on the market. I'm from an area, a country in Europe, where jobs are really hard to come by, but nevertheless, I applied for everything I was qualified for. I didn't care. I just needed a job. I got quite a few interviews, but no luck actually securing a job. This went on for 6 months. Of course, the fact that I didn't have a job made us both a bit uneasy, but I really didn't get a feeling that it was affecting our relationship at all. At the beginning of this year, in January, I had a meeting with my counselor at the Unemployment Bureau. She asked me if I wanted to attend some courses where they teach me to code. Without hesitation, I said yes. Not only would I be able to get a job, but I wouldn't need to worry about employment for the rest of my life. I applied and a few days later, I found out that they accepted me. I don't know what their criteria was, but I knew that they didn't want to take just anyone and I was ecstatic. But something was off. A few days prior, I started to notice her being kind of weird, cold, unattentive. I knew something was amiss. She was starting fights over nothing. I couldn't make sense of it at the time. In one of the arguments we had, I said, "Look, everything is going to be fine now. I'll learn to code and after a few months, we'll be set for life." And she responded with something along the lines of, "Who cares? You're going to fail miserably anyways." Phew. That was weird, I said to myself, but I shrugged it off as her being in one of her bad mood swings. Didn't think much about it at the time. As you might have figured out by now, there was someone else in the picture. A week later, she dumped me for her coworker, a high school dropout working a manufacturing job. I was beyond shook. I sat in my pain for the next 3 months, but then it was high time for me to stop feeling sorry for myself. As I had started with my classes, COVID postponed the whole thing a bit. And I had a lot of work to do since I had never ever seen code before in my life. Now, mind you, these courses were Microsoft courses and the exams we were studying for were Microsoft exams, for which they only gave us 3 months of time, counting down from the last lecture of each course. So I had my work cut out for me. These kinds of exams are usually taken by people who have a degree in computer science or at least employed programmers for the last few years. One day I got home from my classes and opened my laptop. I read the book and did some exercises until like 1 a.m. I was drained. And the more I was looking into it, the less I understood. But at least I got started. I went to bed, tossing and turning and thought to myself, what in the hell did I get myself into? I will never pass this stuff. Then out of nowhere, I heard those words in the back of my head from when she was cheating on me with the other guy. Who cares? You're going to fail miserably anyways. I lit up like a Christmas tree, got back up and continued to code until 4 in the morning. Every time I was exhausted and about to lose it from all the new information, I remembered those words and it was more than enough to keep me going. Today, my fellow betrayed, I passed the first Microsoft programming exam and I have already been studying for the second one for the last 2 months, a totally different programming language, which I plan to take and pass as well. Like the title says, sometimes the much-needed motivation comes from a strange place. I just wanted to share this with people who can relate in some way to the story, as I haven't told anyone else yet. Update. It's been a little over a year since my first and last open topic on this subreddit. At this opportunity, I'd like to thank every single one of you for your support and your encouraging words. At the end of each year, I like to take some time for myself and look back on the year. Therefore, I decided to write another post to this community since it has been so helpful and encouraging to me in the past. Hopefully, it will inspire even one person going through the same turmoil and hurt I went through almost 2 years ago. So what happened since my last post? I got my first software developer gig at the very beginning of the year. The very first company I sent my CV to decided to hire me not long after my original post. I started work in the beginning of January this year. My initial contract was only for 6 months. Understandably, the company wanted to make sure that they didn't take on board a cat in the bag, and I was eager to start my career. So I took the job. They allowed me to work from home, although the offices were only a 3-minute drive from my place. I decided to make sure that I took full advantage of the opportunity in order to display to the whole world who I was and what I was capable of. After about 3 months on the job, I was having a Skype call with the lead tech of the software we were developing. He was not a member of the company, but was a private contractor. This guy was one of the most respected developers in the whole country and had been working for himself for the past decade. Toward the end of our conversation, he said, "Hey, do you work on any projects for yourself?" I responded with, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I have a lot of clients and they are all looking for software developers. You've got some real talent, so let me know if you're interested. I can recommend you to them." I said, "Well, not right now. I have a non-compete clause in my contract, but that contract will expire in the summer and I can hopefully renegotiate with my company to take the clause out." He replied, "Do that and then notify me." Thus, at the end of 6 months, the CEO of the company called me. He said that they were ecstatic with my work ethic and my potential and that they would like to extend my contract. I said, "Sure, I'm interested." I mentioned that I wanted my non-compete clause out of my next contract, and he responded with, "Well, I'll have to check up with the owner first on that." He then proceeded to tell me the salary they were prepared to offer me in our new deal. I immediately knew I was worth more than that. In my mind, I was like, "You're absolutely insane if you think I will sign that." But I responded by saying, "I'll get back to you." I could hear in his voice that he was taken aback a bit by my response, but he said, "Okay, notify me after you think about it." I gave him a call a few days later, a day before my contract officially expired. We talked for a bit and he said that the owner did not like the idea of me opening up my own software developing business as they were scared that it would affect my focus and work in their company. I said that I understood, but I knew that I wasn't backing down from that as independent software developers were making a killing out there. Later that day, I responded to him with an email where I stated what kind of salary I wanted and that I wanted the non-compete clause out of the contract and those terms were non-negotiable. The next day, the day my contract officially expired, I got a call from the owner. Within 15 minutes, he had agreed to all my terms. All I had to do was sign with them for an indefinite term. And at the very end of the conversation, the owner said, "Oh, and one more thing, you are not a software developer anymore. You are head of IT development." I responded with, "Damn it, I should have asked for a higher salary." We both laughed, happy that we had reached an agreement. I accepted the offer and started contacting the companies the lead tech connected me with. Long story short, I finished this year with not only getting a job, but becoming the of the department at the company that hired me. And after my job, I am working for clients in the afternoon and evening that are working on projects for the state. Yes, you read all of that correctly. People admire me and respect me. And needless to say, money is the least of my worries nowadays. My monkey branching ex, as far as I know, she is still with the loser she dumped me for, struggling to make ends meet every month. If she had any concept of loyalty, she could have been a retired stay-at-home wife and mom by now, which she stated multiple times was her wish. I guess she would rather struggle for the rest of her life than support her man and wait another year and a half. Oh, well, c'est la vie. Merry Christmas to every single one of you. If there is anything I want you to take from my update, it's that you should take that pain and hurt and turn it into a fire in your belly that will propel you to new heights and enable you to live a life you never even dreamed of. I know it is still pushing me to be even better and achieve even more every single day. OP, I'm glad to hear you are able to bounce back strong. The best revenge sometimes is bettering yourself. No hateful back and forth, no nuclear option. Just be the best you can be. I'm a true believer in you reap what you sow. Now, let's get into today's second story. Hello, all. I wanted to share my story about my ex cheating on me. It kind of has a wholesome end to it. This was a tough one to deal with for a while, but time healed the wounds from it. Essentially, things felt like it was a happily ever after before she had to go away for a work trip and ended up with her ex. I will post the full story here, too, because it's still good for me to get this off my chest, even though a few years have passed now. So I met my ex-girlfriend at a bar one night when we were out with groups of our friends. She and I hit it right off and exchanged numbers. Before long, we were texting regularly and became an item not long after that. I had dated a fair bit before her, but we really clicked. I actually had that feeling of the one for the first time ever. We had a ton in common, got along famously, had similar goals in life, and just really enjoyed each other's company. She had dated a fair bit before me, too. When we got to the talks of exes, there was one that kept coming up. Let's call him Ethan. She talked about how she thought he was the one, but he was a dick to her, left her a couple of times, and wasn't very well liked by her family or friends. I could tell she had an infatuation with him as she had mentioned moving on, but he would always weasel his way back in. She assured me, though, that he was gone for good and that she had long blocked him everywhere. That gave me a sigh of relief, but deep down, I just had a feeling. Fast forward 9 months. Things were going real well, and we were looking at getting our first apartment together. We were zeroing in on a couple of places and were getting ready to make offers. I already had my own place, and she was still with her parents, but was practically living at my place at that point. We just wanted to get more space in a place that was truly ours. One day, she came home from work and said, the craziest thing happened. Remember my ex, Ethan? He got hired in the sales department of my company. My stomach dropped when I heard that. She worked in the operations department of her company, and I knew that they worked closely with sales for projects. She had started working there a few months prior, and I would like to think it was completely by chance, but you never know. I asked her if this would be a problem. She said no. She would be avoiding him, but also felt that time had passed and that they could be professional together. I did not have a good feeling about it, but she assured me it would be no issue, and that if there was, she would look to move. That was when things started to change. At first, it was small things. She wouldn't want to meet for lunches often. I used to hear from her throughout the day, and then it became an odd text here and there during the workdays. But outside of work, everything was fine. We were still getting along. I didn't notice her more preoccupied with her phone. I never checked it or anything like that, and she was still coming and going at regular times. She just kept saying it was getting busy at work when I pressed about her not engaging as much during the day. Fair point. Then the big one came. She came home and told me that the company was flying her team alongside sales and marketing to their head office for a few days for specialized systems training. I asked if everyone on all teams were going, and she said yes. Subconsciously, I knew right then that it was over. I was trying to play it cool, but inside I knew something might happen there. I still gave her the benefit of the doubt, but told her I was concerned about them being away together. She assured me nothing would come of it, and that she had barely spoken with him. It would be fine. On the day of the trip, I drove her to the airport. It wasn't a long flight, but she texted me when she landed, and we had a Skype call from her hotel room. She said she was going to dinner and for some drinks with the team later, and that she would talk again before her days started. That was the last time I spoke with her for the entire trip. She texted me when she got to the restaurant. Then it was radio silence for 3 whole days. I texted her asking how it was going. Nothing. I tried calling and got her voicemail. I just said I wanted to see how it was going. Nothing. She texted me once after 2 days that she was fine and just swamped, that she was tired when she finished up and would call me before she left. She didn't. On the day of her return home, I texted her saying that if she wanted me to pick her up from the airport, she needed to let me know. Otherwise, I wouldn't be there. I was so pissed at that point. I get things come up and you get busy, but I just felt like something was going on deep down. I never heard from her. I finally texted her that I was going to be at my place and that it would be nice to see her when she got back. I tried to keep calm but just knew that something was up. A few hours went by and then all of a sudden, the door opened. She came in and started saying how much she missed me. I asked her how she got back from the airport. She said a friend drove me here. I asked if it was Ethan and she said maybe. At that point, I was enraged but still kept calm with her. I told her I thought something happened between them while she was gone and I wanted to know the truth right then. She kind of stared off blankly and then started crying. She said yes, it did. She said at first, it was good intentions and she had no plans to see him but that they got talking when the team was at the bar and then one thing led to another and she was back in his hotel room with him. She then said they pretty much had sex the entire time they were at the company head office, which is why I never heard from her. She tried to defend herself saying that he was her one that got away and this provided her some closure. None of that made any sense to me. She then told me she got it out of her system and that it would not happen again. I told her that she was still working with the guy, so there was no way it was over. I told her it was over for us, though, and she had 24 hours to get her shit out of my place. She begged and pleaded to stay but I wouldn't have it. She eventually left and within a month was officially dating her ex again. No surprise there. They actually seemed to make it work and got married not long after too. Good for them. Happy ending I suppose. It messed with me for a long time and I had a hard time trusting people again. Eventually I moved on too and it was all for the best. OP. I'm glad you were able to overcome what happened. Your ex may have gone off to marry her affair partner, but I assure you that in a few years they will be divorced and she will come crawling back to you wanting you to give her another chance. When she eventually does, you know what to do. Give her a trash bag while she's at the door and tell her she needs to take the trash out. I'm sure she will get the message. Thanks for taking the time to listen to today's stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already done so and comment below on what your thoughts are on today's stories. If there's a story you'd like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care. I, a nearly adult male, had not spoken to my father in a little over a year until he called to tell me his wife was pregnant and high risk, and he wanted me to help him look after her. My reason for not speaking to my father is he had an affair with his wife while he was married to my mom. They worked together, she was his boss technically, and when they got found out, they were fired. She was his supervisor, and it was against the rules to be involved with someone you're in a position of power over, but they also did stuff at work, which was also against the rules. They tried to blame mom and attempted to disparage her to me and others because they were angry mom was so angry at them. My father's wife said she had done nothing wrong and didn't like the hostility aimed at her when she was an innocent party. I was a younger teen when all this went down. He brought this woman into our home, expected us to be kind to her, and accept that they wanted to be happy together. He expected me to be more welcoming than I was. I told him to go screw himself and that I didn't want to be around either of them, and they were disgusting. My father had every other weekend custody of me through the divorce proceedings, but Mom and I fought and won the ability for me to decide if I wanted to go to his place or not. Once that was in my hands, I stopped all contact with him and refused to step inside his house. So he called me to tell me about his wife's pregnancy and how it's high risk. I didn't answer, but he left a voicemail. He called me back a few times until I answered. He said she's unable to work and she's home alone a lot while he works. She can't do much for herself, and he wanted me to care for her and their house. I was like, no way I'm taking care of his wife. He said if I don't want to do it for them, think of the baby who'll be my little brother. And he was like, surely you'll want a relationship with him. I said, nope, I won't ever see his new kid, and I won't be his kid's big brother. My father was saying that's not how you treat family. I told him he ceased to be my family when he decided to try and turn me against Mom and brought his side piece into the family home. I told him Mom had done nothing wrong. He cheated, and there he was trying to poison me against her. My father argued that it had nothing to do with me. I pointed out he made it something to do with me when he tried to use me. He protested some more and said he needed help. I said he could take care of his wife, and when it came to that, he could take care of his family and leave me alone. He lectured me about people needing help occasionally, and I'm being a little idiot about this. He said she could lose the baby if forced to do too much. I told him that wasn't my problem. Am I the idiot for telling my estranged father he can take care of his own wife? Not the idiot. Your father sounds like a narcissist. Stay away. Otherwise, he'll make your life a nightmare. He created this situation and could hire someone to care for his wife. He's also putting you in a bad position. If something bad happens to his wife, it could be anything out of your control. He will blame you and try to put that burden on you. You're not even an adult yet and should be going out and living your life. The part that gets me is his new wife saying she did nothing wrong. She had an affair with a married man, and that marriage broke up. And if she didn't do anything wrong, where are all her friends? Why aren't they rallying around her? Just what is doing something wrong, in her opinion? They're both narcissists. This is what makes little sense. Their first resort is OP. They must have lost many friends and family members over this, if they're this desperate. OP, you can work to forgive him for yourself, but that doesn't mean you have to have a relationship. Something I've learned is that not everyone deserves to be forgiven. Losing employment from a work affair with your boss is a foreseeable outcome. Alienating your kid by trying to bring your affair partner home is a very foreseeable outcome. Having a high-risk pregnancy over 40 is a very foreseeable outcome. OP, I don't know what kind of shrooms your father is smoking, but it's better to stay away, far away from him. Your dad makes decisions without considering dealing with the consequences of his actions. You aren't responsible for trying to take care of him in that. He will learn, or not, on his own time. I, female, 26, have 3 older siblings. This is about my oldest sister, Abby, 37. Abby has a son, kindergartner, and I have a daughter, toddler. Abby dealt with years of fertility issues and had probably 10+ losses. Then she had her son, of course. He was Abby's miracle rainbow baby. We were so happy for her. But then it leads to Abby spoiling her son and letting him get away with everything, because he's a miracle and he's special. Because of that, everyone has always bit their tongue when it comes to her son. On Saturday, I had my daughter's birthday party. It was mostly family, and a few of my close friends were invited. I invited Abby and her son, because everyone else in our family was invited. So, I felt bad excluding her. We had different activities for the kids to do. Abby's son didn't like any of them. He was upset none of the presents were for him. He didn't want to eat any of the food we had. He then decided to try to push the cake off the table, because he was mad the cake wasn't his. I got super upset at Abby for allowing her son to act that way. She went on to say her son is special. I said her son is only special to her, which is understandable. But to everyone else, he's a spoiled brat, which shouldn't be overlooked, because he was your special miracle baby. Abby called me a witch and left crying. A few family members have since called me an idiot, because I've never dealt with a miscarriage. So, I don't understand how painful it was for Abby to deal with years of that before her son. It's not like I don't realize her son is special to her, but it doesn't give the excuse for Abby to allow him to act like a spoiled brat. Not the idiot, and you're 100% correct. While he is her miracle baby, no one else in the world will coddle him, except her. And she's raising him to be a spoiled, entitled brat, which will only bring him issues later in life. He needs manners and discipline, and your sister needs a wake-up call. He didn't mean to steal, assault someone, whatever stupid thing he did, because he thinks he can get away with it. She should realize this now than when he's older, and there are real-life consequences to his actions. How much hate do you have for your kids that you refuse to teach them the basic skills of living in a society? Tell the flying monkeys that your sister is harming her child by not preparing him for living with others in the same society. The kid will go to school soon, and it'll be hard for the kid if mom doesn't get her head out of her butt. I don't know why people cannot say, everyone's the idiot here, in situations where it's obvious that everyone's the idiot here. Your sister's son acted inappropriately, and apparently she didn't stop him, which sucks. But telling her that her son is a spoiled brat is uncalled for. In addition to that, it's not helpful. If you can tell someone lovingly that what they're doing is wrong, then maybe they'll listen to you. But if you go on the offensive, it puts them on the defensive, and nothing is accomplished. Rather than trying to view this through the lenses of an adult, parent, aunt, etc., you're calling your nephew names. There's likely more to the story than you're sharing. I, 49 male, am getting married to my fiancé, 41 female, in a month, and the wedding preparations have gone well, except for one issue. My fiancé's family is primarily conservative, and thus, unsupportive of same-gender relationships. My fiancé's siblings plan to bring their children to our wedding. They obviously wouldn't want their kids to witness a gay couple at our wedding. Then they'd need to explain the situation to them. So we decided to disinvite my son's, 21, partner, and his 20s male, from our wedding, to avoid such issues. I thought my son would be mature about it, and understand our side. But instead, he kicked up a huge fuss about it, saying that I'm an idiot, and embarrassed by him, and that if his boyfriend can't attend the wedding, then he won't either. He's being really unreasonable, especially because he and his boyfriend haven't even been together for that long. So it's not like he's really entitled to be invited to any family events yet. And my fiancé does take my side. However, my son is vehement that I'm an idiot, and even got his mom, my ex-wife, to essentially gang up on me about this issue. Am I the idiot? Edit. My fiancé and I don't plan to hide it, per se, but it doesn't mean it needs to be thrown into their faces either. You are the idiot. You made a major mistake, and uninvited the wrong people. The bigot should be told not to come, not your son's partner. If your fiancé is defending her family's bigotry over your son's existence, then the one person you should have uninvited was her. You've essentially told him that you're ashamed of his perfectly normal lifestyle. I hope you're ready to be iced out of his life if you continue down this path. Oh, they're conservative? No, sweetie, they're toxic idiots. And by you thinking it's acceptable to cater to that crap, makes you a toxic idiot as well. You've just shown your son where your loyalties lie, with your coward fiancé and her awful family, instead of your own child. Don't be surprised when you're not invited to his wedding someday. He's correct. He's not the immature one here. That would be you. Forget the wedding. What about the rest of your life? Who marries someone who thinks his child is a deviant monster? Who invites a room full of people to say anything if they think your child is evil? It's not just the wedding. The poor kid's dad straight up chose a family of ignorant bigots over his own child. It never ends. It's never about alienating a person for a single event. It's about alienating them for the remainder of your combined lives. Sorry, son, you can't come to Christmas this year because I have to choose my nieces and nephews from my second wife's family over you, because you have the big gay. I don't know how to explain to my bigot in-laws that love is love. Your son would be a fool to ever speak to you again. Hope your marriage works out, because it's all you'll have in your life. I, 26, female, live in England. I own my home and understand that I'm fortunate, but I also worked hard for it. Any money I received or earned while working part-time till graduation went into my savings account. Most people on my street are social housing tenants. I'm still determining what that is, but they've explained that you're eligible for the scheme if you're on a low income. It's more secure than the private sector, as you mostly get assured tenancies, even though there are different tenancy types. For a while, I got on well with my next-door neighbors, Emily and Ben. They also have 3 kids, a young male teen, a female tween, and a female preschooler. But soon I started experiencing a lot of problems from next door. I work from home often, and I could hear shouting next door, constantly. Ben is 5 feet 11 inches, 145 kilograms, and quite loud and intimidating, and I could hear their kids screaming and crying. I had to ask them to lower their voices daily, and I even explained that I work from home. The next set of problems revolved around the young teen's son. I spotted their son climbing over a wall to get into my garden to get his football back, which at first I ignored it. Then after it happened 10 times, I finally decided to speak with his parents, and I can't remember what I said entirely. Still, it was something like, "Hey, I just wanted to have a word as I've seen your son trespass 11 times to get his ball from my garden. I would appreciate it if you could get him to stop, as he is trespassing, and if he just came around to the front to knock on my front door and asked for his ball back, I would happily collect it for him." The neighbors apologized and said they'd make sure that their son didn't do it and knocked. Their son did it again a few days later while I was in my lounge. I walked into my garden, which made him jump, and spoke with him. I told him I'd seen him trespass to collect his ball on various occasions. I told him I had talked with his parents and that trespassing is a crime, and I would appreciate it if he could just come to the front and knock in the future. He didn't say anything and just went back into his garden. I informed his parents and they apologized, but it continued. I got fed up with it and decided to invest in CCTV. Finally, I wrote a letter to residents on my road to give them a week's notice that CCTV is being installed at my address and it'll cover my entire garden and it will also cover my doorway. I also wrote that I'm getting a Ring doorbell camera. After installing CCTV, I thought it would stop the kids from trespassing. It continued. I saved the footage, filed a police report against the son for trespassing, and sent all my evidence to the police. I knew there was a strong chance that nothing would happen, but I just wanted the son to have some responsibility. When my neighbors found out, they were angry as heck with me, and since then our relationship soured. My siblings found out about this and think I'm a total idiot for this. Am I the idiot? You are the idiot. How is this kid retrieving his ball from your yard hurting you? Also, you made a big deal out of telling them not to bother you because you work from home, but then you're telling them, but have your kid knock on my door to get his ball back. Your relationship with your neighbors soured because you're being needlessly petty and hard to live around, and you called the police on them because a child was retrieving a toy. Congrats. Low-income housing isn't a scheme. It keeps the lower-income people, usually families, from homelessness. Legally, you aren't an idiot, but as a neighbor, you are for sure. The kid sounds like he has a rough home life, and is just getting his ball out of your garden. He doesn't probably talk to any adult in his life, much less a guy who keeps complaining about him to his parents. If he's not wrecking anything in your garden, you are the idiot for making his life harder. Yeah, OP comes across to me as someone who wanted to live in Kensington, but couldn't afford it, and is now disgusted that she has to live with people with low incomes. If he knocked on your door every time he needed the ball back, you'd just complain about that too, since it would interrupt your work from home. It's a kid and his ball. Good lord, lady. IQ 27 male, am engaged to Sky, 26 female, and we have our bridesmaids and groomsmen already chosen. My groomsman will be Sky's brother, Kai, a great friend of mine, and my best friend, Nick. Sky has her two closest friends as bridesmaids. I have a 24-year-old stepsister, with whom I'm not close, and Sky is maybe seen twice in our 7-year relationship. She's not in the wedding. She's just a regular guest. This bothered my dad's wife, and she offered us $3,000 toward the wedding to include her daughter. We turned her down. Sky left the decision to me, and I didn't even need to consider it. My dad and his wife are saying I'm unreasonable, and I should accept the compromise because her daughter was 4 years old when I became her brother, and they know she feels hurt that she wasn't asked to be a bridesmaid. They said she'd be crushed on the day, seeing Sky's brother as my groomsman, and knowing she wasn't asked to be a bridesmaid as my only sibling. I told them Sky and Kai are close, and Kai's one of my closest friends. Sky's met my stepsister twice, and I never felt close to her. They said the money should have made an enormous difference, and offering that compromise was more than generous. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. The wedding party is who the bride and groom feel most deserve the honor, and who they want standing with them. It was honestly lovely of the bride to leave the decision up to you, as it's her bridal attendance the stepsister would be part of. The decision has been made, and honestly, does your stepmother think her daughter would feel better knowing the only reason she's in the wedding is because you were bribed into including her? If this is how your stepmother approaches things, I understand why you aren't close to her. I can't imagine your parents really thinking this through. I'd be devastated to learn I was made a bridesmaid because my parents paid the couple getting married to include me. How could they not see how that's so much worse than being a regular guest? God, that would be so humiliating. I can't even imagine being in that situation. This is so wrong on so many levels. If that $3,000 was accepted, the stepmother would think she was running the wedding. Remind them that the stepsister doesn't need to come if it'll be too hard on her. It's not like being in the wedding is a day of game decisions. No amount of money changes the fact that it's your special day. Your parents should